Why won't you just tell me the truth? I hissed, heart pounding so hard I thought it might shatter. My ribcage. The living room felt smaller, the walls pressing in with every syllable. My husband, David, leaned against the mantel, arms crossed, that same weary expression I'd grown terrified of. Because you're obsessive, he snapped, voice cold. You've crossed every boundary, gone through my phone, grilled my friends. It's unhealthy. Unhealthy? I nearly laughed, but instead I pressed my palm to the back of the couch, willing myself to stay steady. Is it unhealthy to want to know who you really are? I shot back. Or is it unhealthy to hide behind half-truths and whispers? It started innocently, or so I told myself. We had been married 3 years, and our life together was comfortable. A cozy house on Maple Street, a beloved cat named Luna a weekend, barbecues with neighbors. But last month he'd mentioned a family emergency and spent 3 days away, phone silent. When he returned, he offered an excuse. His estranged brother had fallen ill. I tried to express sympathy, but every time I brought it up, he'd change the subject or grow distant, like a curtain falling over his eyes. That was when the itch began, an itch I couldn't scratch away. My first mistake was trusting the soft corner of his jacket that still smelled like him. It was on a chair in the hallway. I thought it harmless to slide it into my laundry basket and check the pockets. I found a faded photograph tucked into the lining, a younger David standing in front of a rundown building with barred windows. He wore a leather jacket and a defiant smirk, nothing like the clean-cut software engineer I knew. On the back, scribbled in shaky ink, March 2003, Ridgeway Youth Center. My blood ran cold. This is it, I thought. This is the secret he's burying. I waited until he left for his morning run, then booted up my laptop and Googled Ridgeway Youth Center. My screen populated with news articles from 2 decades ago, an expose on a juvenile detention facility where inmates were mistreated, rumors of violence, a fire that killed 2 teenagers. My palms sweated as I scrolled. Could David have been there? An inmate? A victim? My breath caught when I found a local blog post from a grieving parent. My son, Marcus, died in the Ridgeway fire. If anyone knew answers, maybe David Thompson can help. I ducked, heart pounding, but kept reading. Comments from someone named David Thompson. Someone vowing to testify, to bring justice. Then the account went quiet. The dates lined up. David would have been 17 then. The thought slammed into me. He'd lied about his age when we met. He'd lied about his entire past. My head spun as fear and adrenaline mixed. All those late-night texts to someone named M. What if it was his brother? Or the sister of one? Of the lost kids? My mind reeled. Over the next day, I followed breadcrumbs. I visited the local library's archives, poring over microfiche from dusty newsprint. I found 2 articles, one about the Ridgeway fire, listing full names of wardens and victims, another a follow-up on a lawsuit that was quietly dropped. No mention of David's name. He'd slipped off the record. My pulse raced. He must have changed it. My eyes stung as I realized the phone book in our town directory listed 3 David Thompsons. In that era, I noted addresses, cross-referenced them with public records. I was biting into a world I didn't belong in, a world he'd intentionally left behind. But when I cornered him that evening, he slammed the door on my questions. "It's none of your business," he snarled, and stormed upstairs. The echo of his footsteps felt like a verdict. I sat on the couch, stunned. "He's lying," I whispered to Luna, who patted over and mewed, brushing against my ankle. He's lying, and I'm not crazy for wanting the truth. The next morning I called my sister, Anna, the only person I trusted with my suspicions. "I need you to help me," I said, voice urgent. When she arrived, I laid out the photos and printouts. On the dining table, the faded photograph, the newsprint articles, the list of names. Anna's eyes widened as she flipped through each piece. "Oh, Emily," she said, using my childhood nickname. "What if you're right?" Her voice trembled, and I realized how much I needed her. Courage. She sat beside me. "You need to confront him, but carefully. Gather solid proof, something he can't deny without incriminating himself." For the next week, we became detectives. We traced the home address in the public records, a small house on Oak Avenue that had belonged to a Thompson family in 2003. We drove past on separate days, noting the chipped white paint and a mailbox overgrown with weeds. Finally, I mustered the nerve to knock on the door, only to be greeted by an elderly woman with a gentle smile. "Can I help you?" she asked. My heart pounded. "I'm looking for a David Thompson who used to live here around 2003. Her face grew grave. "My husband and I took in a foster teen. Then, he was troubled but kind. He ran away after the fire. We never heard from him again." My eyes filled. "That's him," I murmured. The woman placed a hand over mine. "God bless you for looking," she whispered. I drove home in a daze, wrenching the steering wheel as tears blurred my vision. When I walked in, David was in the kitchen, coffee steam curling upward. For a moment he looked normal. But then he saw me, face drawn, and his expression flickered. I held the photograph of the youth center picture up. "Mom knew you," I said, voice shaking. "She says you ran away." He swallowed hard, eyes dark. "It's complicated," he said quietly. My heart seized. "No," I replied, voice firmer than I felt. "It's deceit, and I won't stand for it." He backed away, shoulders slumped, eyes haunted. I realized then that this wasn't just about a hidden past. It was about trust, identity, the foundations of our marriage. I needed answers. Why had he left? Who had he lost? What guilt had driven him to bury himself under a new name? And most urgently, was the man I trusted, the man I loved, real at all? He didn't answer that night. Instead, he retreated into silence, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the evidence scattered across our kitchen island. My phone buzzed with messages from Anna checking in. I typed back, "He's not confessing. He's more distant than ever." She replied, "Be careful, Em. Secrets run deep." Late that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I replayed every moment, the way he smiled when we met, the gentle way he held our daughter, the soft way he stroked my hair when I cried. But was it all a lie? I felt an ache deep in my chest that threatened to swallow me whole. Then I heard his soft footsteps crossing the floor, and I sat up. He stood in the doorway, eyes red-rimmed. He began, voice hoarse. I braced myself. He took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way." My throat tightened. "Then tell me," I urged. "Start at the beginning." His gaze met mine, for the first time in months, unguarded. He walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. "I was 15 when the fire happened," he said. Quietly, "I lost everything, my family, my home." His voice cracked. "I couldn't face the shame, the guilt. So I left, changed my name, tried to start over." Tears glistened in his eyes. "I never meant to lie to you. I thought I was protecting everyone, including you. I swallowed around a lump in my throat. Protecting me from what? I whispered. He closed his eyes. From the truth that I was worthless, that I died in that fire too. His words trembled with raw pain. I thought if you loved David Thompson, that wouldn't hurt anymore. But I see now how much it's hurt you. I sat beside him, heart aching. I need to know everything, I said softly, because I can't rebuild trust on half-truths. He nodded, wiping his cheek. I will tell you, but it's not easy. He paused, swallowed hard, then began the long, painful confession of a teenage boy who'd lost more than most could bear. And, as his words unfolded, I realized our journey toward truth and toward healing was only just beginning. I closed my eyes against the weight of his confession, hearing the tremor in his voice as he described the smoke, the screams, the searing heat that stole his childhood. He'd carried that night, every charred memory, every survivor's guilt, like a second skin. I buried it, he whispered. Not just my name, but all of it. I thought if I became someone else, I could finally breathe. I reached for his hand, feeling the rough calluses from his workday soothe under my fingertips. Thank you for telling me, I said softly. I know it must have taken everything you had. He nodded, gaze fixed on the bedspread. But the lies, they've hurt you. Hurt our family. He paused as though bracing for judgment. Instead, I squeezed his hand. Yes, the lies hurt, but so did the fire. I swallowed, mind racing. Through the days I'd felt isolated, angry, desperate for truth. I love you not because of your past, but in spite of it. I need to understand, though, to know who you were, so I can stand with who you are now. He exhaled, relief and fear mingling in his eyes. Okay, he said. I'll show you everything. He rose and fetched a battered cardboard box from the closet, its edges frayed, taped over like a time capsule. I braced myself as he opened it. Inside lay faded journal pages of sooty leather, jacket, a single sneaker blackened at the tip, and a stack of crinkled letters tied with a ribbon. I drew in a breath. Your journal. He nodded. I wrote after the fire, trying to process everything. I never shared it. I lifted the yellowed pages, reading his teenage scrawl. I woke to ashes my friends gone. I promised I'd tell their stories. Tear stains marred several pages. He wanted justice. I realized. That's why he reached out to people, why he researched the lawsuit. My heart ached for the boy who'd clawed through grief with pen and paper. We spent the evening in hushed conversation, reading his entries aloud. He told me about his foster parents, how they'd sheltered him for months before his disappearance, and about a mentor, Mrs. Alvarez, who urged him to seek a fresh start. Then I understood he'd run away not out of cowardice, but to survive. I never meant to deceive you, he said, voice cracking. I thought love required no baggage. I kissed his knuckles. Love requires honesty. That's the difference. In the days that followed, I introduced pieces of his past into our life, placed his journal on the coffee table, draped his leather jacket over a chair, taped a photo of the Ridgeway Youth Center. Now a memorial on our fridge. Each artifact carried weight, but also the promise of healing. I saw him glancing at these reminders with a mix of pain and pride. It's part of our story now, I told him, voice firm, not buried in silence. We decided to honor his lost friends with a small ceremony at the old youth center site, now converted into a community garden. One Saturday morning, hand in hand, we walked through rows of wildflowers where bricks once stood, reading aloud his journal entries and planting marigolds a memory. Our daughter scattered seeds, calling out for the kids who needed friends, and I felt tears of gratitude, gratitude for truth, for fresh starts, for love that endures. Despite hidden scars, back home, we sat at the kitchen table, coffee for me, tea for him, and drafted a letter to the local news outlet, offering his testimony to ensure the Ridgway story never faded again. He hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his face. "I'm scared," he admitted. "What if reopening old wounds only brings more pain?" I reached across, brushing away the doubt. "Truth sometimes hurts, but silence destroys." He nodded, resolve hardening. Together we typed the letter, weaving in facts and his personal account, committing to justice for the nameless faces. Still haunted by that fire. That night, as we tucked our daughter into bed, I held him close in the hallway. "I know it's been hard," I whispered, "but we're stronger now." He rested his cheek against my hair. "I feel seen," he breathed. "Not just loved for who I am, but accepted for who I was." In the hush before her final good night, I realized that our marriage had been reborn from secrets into solidarity. The next day, I sat at my desk at work, drafting a lesson plan on community history. My phone buzzed. The local paper wanted to interview David. They'd read his letter. I forwarded the message to him with a smiley emoji and typed, "They're ready to listen." Minutes later, he walked into the staff room, phone in hand, eyes shining. "Thank you," he said, "for believing my story." I wrapped him in a hug that felt both future and past, an embrace spanning every hidden moment. That evening, we relaxed on the couch, his journal open between us, the TV muted in favor of our own conversation. We spoke of childhood dreams he'd abandoned, of the art he used to love, of the fear that had silenced him for so long. I encouraged him to pick up a pen again, to write not from pain, but from hope. He smiled, closing his journal and pulling a fresh notebook from beside the couch. "This time," he said softly, "I'll write with you." I nodded, heart swelling as I picked my own pen. Under the warm lamp glow, we sketched side by side, me drawing our daughter's laughter hymn, writing lines of redemption, our creative whispers intertwined, a melody of renewal. I realized that honesty had given us more than truth. It had given us unity, vulnerability, a shared path forward. Late that night, I lay in bed, listening to his soft breathing, thinking of the journey we'd undertaken, from suspicion to confession, from isolation to collaboration. I marveled that a hidden past, once a prison, had become the cornerstone of our renewed bond. I whispered into the darkness, "Thank you for trusting me with your truth." His murmur of "I love you" drifted back, and I drifted into sleep, confident that our future would be built on the solid ground of openness, compassion, and unwavering partnership.